If y'all wanted some of the best whining and comedy, you should have been watching Fox News. They have been beside themselves all last night and today because they were out there, crime wasn't the top issue. They were out there, remember last year was critical race theory. They were sitting here, red wave, we're wiping the floor to everybody. Y'all role play. You gotta play this here. Y'all watch this.
With voters. When it comes to the state of Pennsylvania, why did Dr. Oz lose? Well, it looks like, according to the exit polling, it's because Fetterman won. Fetterman got 57% of the independents. Fetterman got 67% of the Hispanics. He got 57% of the women. And remember, it was just last week we were talking about that Wall Street Journal story that showed that there was a 27-point swing from suburban women from Democrats to Republicans. Fetterman, won 57% of the women. And in the state of Pennsylvania, most important issue by far was abortion, with 35%, followed by inflation at 29%, and crime was 11%. And that is what drove people to the polls.
We have the worst inflation in 4 decades. The worst collapse in real wages in 40 years, the worst crime wave since the 1990s, the worst border crisis in U.S. history. We have Joe Biden, who is the least popular president since Harry Truman, since presidential polling happened, and there wasn't a red wave. That is a searing indictment of the Republican Party. That is a searing indictment of the message that we have been sending to the voters. They looked at all of that and looked at the Republican alternative and said, no, thanks. The Republican Party needs to do a really deep introspection look in the mirror right now, because this is an absolute disaster for the Republican Party, and we need to turn back. We need to look at who won today. Ron DeSantis, DeWine, these governors, Kemp, Abbott. You know, look at these governors. This is the path to the future. At electing these radical candidates who ran far behind them has put the Republican Party in a terrible position, and voters have indicted the Republican Party.
Harold. It's been a really tough 2 years, a very tough 2 years. But what the church did is respond rightly. It responded by praying. We had more Zoom calls set up for the last 2 years, just praying for the nation, people turning to the Lord, repenting of their sins, confessing their sins. We've seen pastors doing the right thing by preaching from the pulpit according to biblical values. So we've seen the church respond. And it just doesn't make sense. So we'll learn more, I think, of course, in the days that are in front of us. But surely this is absolutely not the result that was predicted by almost uniformly by the pollsters, but it wasn't the result that I think any of us thought were going to happen tonight. It's been as not only traditional, but I would say crashingly disappointing, because this really should have been a wave election. And now it doesn't even look like we're dog paddling.
Well, maybe because Jesus ain't on your side. That could be it. Now, one of the greatest laughs I've got. Now, y'all know I can't stand a little punk Charlie Kirk at Turning Point USA. I love that this was captured last night live. Watch this.
About what the future of the Republican Party is going to be in 2024. Now is the time to focus in and win right now.
How about this, that this doesn't happen in the presidential race in 2024?
Michaels should be governor.
He lost.
Did they call it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they really call it?
Yeah, they called it.
Do they have some outstanding ballots the same way that we do, though?
No.
That was close. Wait, how much did you lose by?
Also,
did they call it?
The people I cover, the people I actually trust, called it.
Really?
Yeah,
it's 51-48.
It's pretty big,
like
too.
3 points.
Oh, it's 3 points.
3 points,
Expanded about 100.
But Ron Johnson's holding strong. Ron Johnson has
about what the future of the Republican Party is going to be.
Are there any ballots left? Could we possibly still win this? Oh my God, no. Really? Okay, y'all, I gotta play one more before I go to my panel. Let me find it. This was, you know, on a consistent basis, it's shameful to have to deal with Harris Faulkner on Fox News. She's actually an embarrassment. And I know Harris, and she just sounds more ridiculous every single day. Listen to this idiotic exchange today on the so-called news show on Fox News.
An optimistic future for the country, but on the other hand, I'm just being practical. I think that absolutely it looks like he's in a much stronger position to be the nominee today than he was yesterday.
You know, I love it when you look at from a 37,000-foot range at politics. What is happening right now? Are Democrats so entrenched that they're okay with horrible crime statistics and victims by the hour here and many other Dem-led cities? Are the high prices not bothering Democrat voters? Like, what causes them in the worst of circumstances to say yes to their party?
Yeah. It's a really, really interesting and it's the fundamental question, because it wasn't just Biden's approval rating that was so poor. You saw that on the handling of the issues. So I know there's been some discussion today about whether, well, actually abortion was higher of a priority than the economy. But everyone still has the economy as the top issue. And on all of the polling, again, not just from Republican pollsters and so on who want to believe in good results, all the polling universally showed massive disapproval of what Democrats have done, particularly on the economy and on crime and on immigration and the border. And so what's really interesting here is that voters are rejecting the policy arguments and the policy outcomes of the Democrats, but it's not turning into support for the Republicans. So that says that there needs to be a stronger, more positive alternative put forward. I think the real lesson here for the Democrats, if they choose to learn it, but I don't think they will, is that this is not a green light for them to go further and faster to the left.
But you know they do see it that way, though.
Well, I know that's what they're going to do.
You know they think this is a green light.
Exactly.
Here's why that's utterly laughable. They act like women and young voters just didn't vote last night. And then, oh no, well, universal crime is number one. It wasn't. It wasn't. And here's the whole deal. I saw Chris Hayes sent a tweet out, and he was talking about the impact of the issue of crime in these suburban areas in New York. And I said, yeah, Chris, that means it should have been on local New York. It shouldn't have been dominating national news. And that's a lie. Exit polling shows that in a lot of places, crime was not the number one issue. It wasn't the number two issue. Abortion was an issue. Democracy was an issue. The economy was an issue. No, that is a conjured up, created talking point by Fox News for their audience. And guess what? Those idiots fell for the hook, line, and sinker, and now they're trying to be mad. Well, I don't know why the rest of the country didn't believe it, because we kept telling them. That's why, because everybody don't watch our dumbasses.
Well, here's the thing that people have to understand. For many women and for many families, abortion, reproductive justice is an economic issue. And so by just disregarding these issues and saying, oh, no, this is an issue of morality or this is an issue about something else, we have to understand how economics plays a part in people's everyday lives. And just because it doesn't show up for you in that way doesn't mean that it doesn't show up for those voters who turned out last night. And so like I tell a lot of people, politicians should not be choosing their voters. Voters should be choosing their politicians. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this country, especially with what we saw in 2021, with a lot of the voter suppression laws being passed in states across the country. Over 41 states introduced voter suppression laws. We saw that there were people in power who wanted to choose their voters. And voters said last night, we know what's going on in this country, but we are the ones who get to decide who we want to represent us. And that's what we're going to continue to see moving forward.
Here's why I think this is too funny, Monique, because they're sitting here whining and complaining. But the polls. I keep trying to explain to people, polls are a snapshot. And the one thing that polls can never account for when people show up on election day. I go back to in 2008 when Obama lost New Hampshire. And people I remember on CNN, Lou Dobbs go, well, everybody was wrong. No, if you actually look at the numbers, Obama actually got the actual number the polls were indicating, but you can't predict a surge of voters on election day. And what we saw yesterday was a surge of women voters, a surge of young voters. We saw in places a surge of black voters. And that's what happened. And they're just mad what they predicted and what they were trying to force on everybody else, the country said, y'all can go to hell. Democrats cleaned up in gubernatorial races. Democrats now control the legislature in Michigan, in Minnesota. They flipped. We're going to talk to Representative Malcolm Kenyatta in a second. They flipped the House. A black woman is now about to be the Speaker of the House in Pennsylvania. And that's for all you punk asses out there who said don't vote. That's why you actually vote. Lena Hidalgo beats back $9 million in Harris County in Houston. Summer Lee beats back $3 million from AIPAC in Pittsburgh. You have progressive DAs who were elected. You had a racist sheriff in Massachusetts who was thrown out because folks voted. They are just mad that America has rejected crazy-ass MAGA people.
Right, but whoever that person was, I don't watch Fox News, so I don't know that man's name, but his analysis was spot on when he said accurately that the approval ratings are low, that the voters in this country are not showing up saying, we love what the president is doing, we love the president's policies, we love what the vice president is doing. All of those numbers are not where we would like them to be, but what he followed up with and said is it didn't convert to them voting for Republicans. Why? Because Republicans don't have any ideas. They've turned into the party of no. They are only against things. They are not for anything. So when the voters went and looked, they're like, well, they're probably thinking, well, at least I got a shot in my arm. I remember I got that PPP money. I got the infrastructure. I don't have the job I like, but I got a job I didn't have a year ago. And so when you start thinking about it, you're like, okay, the people who are doing some work are better for me as a choice than the people who are against everything and expect to just ride my anti. And so I am hopeful from what I saw yesterday, because that means that even with a lower turnout in certain areas, there are more people who are not voting based on hate and hate alone, not voting based on, still by white fear, y'all, but not voting based on white fear and white fear alone. We had people coming to the polls and saying, no. Enough of this foolishness.
Voters actually want government that works.
Yeah.
Voters are tired of just obstructionists and just hearing, well, no, we're going to just stop and shut everything down.
Right.
The country is hurting, but we actually have solutions. But some of those solutions require a government that's actually working.
And in a moment, we're going to talk about our panel of young voters. The reason we're waiting, folks, is because Tiffany Lofton got caught in traffic, so we're trying to hold the segment so she can get to the studio. So we're going to really unpack that because young voters responded to policies that passed that they actually like. That's the thing here, Larry, that people just have to understand. And if Democrats were smart, they would step back and they would go, okay, we were supposed to get wiped out. That didn't happen. There were some historic gains. Now the question is, how do you increase your approval ratings? How do you go back to D.C.? You're now going to have to deal likely with a Republican House. But here's the thing. Several of those Republicans who won, they won in swing districts. They can't go to Congress acting a damn fool like the rest of the MAGA people because they're going to be freaking out about getting reelected in 2 years. And Democrats can now go, guess what? Show your ass and see what happens. We're targeting y'all come 2024.
Yeah, Roland. So you make a really good point about those, those incumbent, elected officials. And even with McCarthy, the margins, if things we think that should go in the House, are be very tight, and you have to govern a certain way. And when I worked on the Hill, for a couple of years, and when you had either Democrats or Republicans, and they had very tight margins, so you have to govern differently. The other thing I want to highlight, you talked about young people, and why this is important, and we talked about some of this last night, is that we talked a lot about cultivating not only voters, but in terms of future leaders. So many of these voters will also one day be politicians or support or contribute to PACs and various other entities.
Yep.
So it's really important in the Democratic Party to once again cultivate support, make sure when you mine the data, you see the issues that they talked about student loan debt, you talked about Hobbs' decision, all the issues that young people, generally Americans care about, particularly young people, because they have certainly many more years to go, is these issues are critically important to them. The other thing I want to add, Roland, as it relates to the that Fox, you played that clip, and they talked about inflation. But Republicans voted against the Inflation Reduction Act. So how can you expect people to support you if you talk about inflation, but you voted against a bill that addresses the issue? So it's contradictory. They don't have a platform. I think Monique said they're the party of no or the anti-party. But that's pretty much all they are. They're just, they create, talk about culture wars, but they don't really have any policy issues they focus on.
Well, Congo, again, now moving forward, Democrats still have to deliver. And if there's anything they should do is really sit down and say, we are going to have a far better economic message, and we're going to take credit for the stuff that we've done and not just let somebody else also reframe us the way they want us to.
Absolutely, and that has to start immediately. Just quickly, as relates to you talking about these Republicans showing themselves. Just today in Biden's speech, he was talking about he's meeting with McCarthy later today. So even McCarthy knows that they got to start getting themselves in line because the MAGA folks have been rejected. And so when it comes to rebranding themselves, Democrats have to show that they are willing to be bipartisan. They are willing to do that, but they have to stick with the people who brought them to the party.
Yep.
And so right now, they got to go deeper as relates to getting out to the youth, because these pollsters didn't have anything they knew nothing about what the youth were going to do. Now they said, we are here and we got this. I mean, these young people, they're out here getting vasectomies and sterilizing themselves and all of these things because of Dobbs. So at the beginning of their reproductive years, they're making decisions like this and they're pissed off. So now we got them. Hopefully we can stay engaged with them because we cannot afford to lose them. And then just lastly, on the thing about crime, let's all be real. The reason why crime was brought in fairly late into this midterm election thing is because it was another part of the Southern strategy way to demonize these people and have them focus on black people being more prone to crime. That's why they did it. Despite the fact that crime is a bigger problem and murders are a bigger problem proportionally in 9 out of 10 states that are led by Republican governors. They didn't have an argument on crime. They just wanted to flip it into race and more racism. That's why they also said things like Mandela Barnes, different kind of Democrat. Stay dark and Stacey Abrams in advertisements. They try to do this Willie Horton 2.0 type of thing, and it got rejected because it wasn't true. But they don't have anything, so they're going to double down on that. And we're also going to get these types of Republicans who won. We got a good window rolling if we don't mess this up.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, just real quick, because the MAGA folks, until they go away or Trump gets locked up, they're going to be fighting with the DeSantis folks for the next 2 years. It's prime for the taking. We got to jump on this.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
We are in sunny South Dallas. The election is coming up. It's super important that folks know who they are voting for, but more importantly, what they are voting for. Y'all, we got the free shirts and free lunch right over here.
Freedom is our birthright. No matter what we're up against, we're sending a message in Dallas and Texas and in the country. We won't back down. That's what this bus tour is all about.
The housing cost is one of the most capitalized areas that we have found. People who are marginalized, that are brown and black, we are suffering the most, and I think that we have the biggest vote and the biggest impact in this election.
I'm voting for affordable housing, for sure.
We should not be paying the cost of a utility failure because our elected officials are too proud to say we need help.
I know that we can bring out our people to vote. It's a part of our birthright. Right. It's a part of our heritage, and surely it's a part of our present and part of our future.
That's right. That's what's up. And we won't black down. Forward that message to 5 friends, because in that message, it's got links to how to get registered, how to check your registration status.
Like I said, 2:30 we'll start rendezvousing right here on this street. I am voting to let our voice be heard in the rural communities that, hey, we are people too. There are things that we need.
Free shirts, free food, and lots of power.
We are in Longview, Texas, where Black Voters Matter, 365.
Whatever type of oppression a white supremacist throws our way, we will not black down. We are in relentless pursuit of liberation of our people.
Freedom is liberation for black bodies and black communities to make economic change through political power.
Freedom is choice.
We won't black down.
We won't black down.
We won't black down, y'all.
We won't black down.
We won't black down.
We won't black down.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?